Good. So, welcome again to the nature of mind and to these 5 explorations into the nature of mind. So, one of the things I was really emphasizing yesterday was that you could say very simply that the Buddhist vision of the nature of mind is that the mind is infinite, that the mind has unfathomable depth. One of the things that's been striking me more and more is that it's 3 things about the mind. Firstly, we don't know what the mind is. We can see where neurons fire and so on, but we still don't know how this is possible, how it's possible to walk in a field and listen to a blackbird. Nobody knows how this wonderful panorama of world appears. It's the big problem in philosophy. And the second thing about the mind is that we don't know how broad it can be, how ingenious and creative it can be. We haven't got to the edges of that. I believe we've sent a spacecraft outside of our solar system. We've got photographs of Mercury. We still don't know how much we can do. And Wallace Stevens talks about how high that highest candle lights the dark. And what he means by that is that the human mind can light up, as it were, the dark of the universe to a degree that we still don't know how much we can light up. The inventions of the human mind have been quite remarkable. And we don't know how deep the human mind can go. Buddhism would say it includes the potential for Buddhahood, includes the potential for a whole new kind of mind. But yes, Buddhism, very simply, you might say that Buddhism is saying that the mind is infinite, but we get stuck to the surface of our mind. For most of us, we don't have metaphysical questions about the mind, even philosophical questions. What we've got is practical problems with our mind. We haven't got metaphysical problems usually with our mind. Some people like to think they have, but it all feels a bit highfalutin to me. I come from Warwickshire, and you don't have philosophical problems with mind in Warwickshire, I can tell you. So most of us, the real issues of mind is that we get stuck to the surface of our mind, like a fly to fly paper. The simple Buddhist way of saying what we're getting stuck to is those 5 nivaranas, or coverings of the mind. And those are craving or wanting something other than what's in your experience now. Craving, it means neurotic craving. It doesn't mean longing for the transcendental or something. It doesn't mean a genuine longing for transcendence. It means craving after things that can never really satisfy. And we're stuck in that a lot of our time, aren't we? Wanting things that when you get them, they don't work. A holiday, the love of your life, a promotion, a prize. When you get them, you get a little high, and then you go back to your mind as usual. And then the opposite to that, of course, we're often enough stuck in aversion, sometimes just mildly so. Sometimes our lives can be ruined by feeling aversion to someone. Our career in life can be feeling indignant, feeling put upon, and so on. So we can easily be stuck in that level of aversion. We can then easily be stuck in sloth and sort of mental torpidity. So where you can't really get your energy moving. Do you remember what it was like when you were a teenager and you just terminally bored and you just couldn't get interested in it? I remember trying one Saturday, a rainy Saturday, trying to do something. I just was so bored. Like you have this bone aching boredom at about 15, don't you? And if you're not careful, you can live a life where you never really get interested in anything. You never really get your energy is going. So you end up with this kind of mental torpidity and physical sloth. Or you get the sort of opposite of that, where you're sort of stuck in restless worry and anxiety and so on. And that can become a fixed state of mind, can't it? Where you're always slightly set off to worry and be anxious. One of the things we're seeing from the pandemic, it's had lots of consequences. One of them is to create a spike in anxiety and fear. And if we're not careful, we'll just live in a mild state of anxiety and fear. And then as we're doing that, our life ticks away. It's one of the great tragedies of life that we can live like that. And then finally, we're often doubting the value of our mind, you could say, to put it that way. That we don't really think that our mind is infinite. We just think that we're condemned to the nirvana's, we're condemned to the best we can hope for as a croissant and a cuddle, as it were. Actually, that's not so bad, is it? When you come to think about it. Fat chance here, I'm afraid. There you go. But those are, the Buddhist tradition, that's the surface of our mind that we get stuck to, yeah. But below that surface, we've no idea how deep the mind can go. We may still not have plumbed it. But certainly from a Buddhist point of view, the mind has within its depths the treasure of Buddhahood itself, which is an entirely new awareness, an entirely new kind of mind that's personified by being awake. So the area I want to sort of close in on that, the rather grand discussion of mind, is this question of aversion. Yeah. So yesterday we talked about we could imagine the state of mind we want to create. We talked about cultivating the opposite in terms of the nirvana's, in terms of the hindrances. Today I want to say a little bit about aversion, and especially aversion in meditation. And what I want us to do this morning is really look out for an subtly aversive habit that we easily get into. I don't know how quite to wind into this, but very often when you meditate, when I meditate at least, it's very easy to, and it's quite difficult to express because it's quite subtle, but it's very easy to, as it were, see your experience, including your experience of meditation and your experience of yourself, through an aversive lens, in a subtle but habitual way. So, you can be subtly thinking, already this meditation is not as good as yesterday, or I'd like my meditation to be better. Why isn't there more in my meditation? And even that thought, it's quite difficult to express, because that desire for your meditation to go deeper and richer and fuller is good. Very often riding on that desire is a kind of aversion for what is. So instead of, trying to diligently do what you need to do for your meditation to go deeper, when you're saying, I'd like it to go deeper, it's actually a self-criticism that this isn't deep enough. But self-criticism is a good thing. Human beings that can't criticize themselves are psychotic. So you do need to be able to criticize yourself, but you don't want to criticize yourself in a kind of neurotic, self-condemning, self-thwarting kind of way. Yeah. Genuine criticism sort of shows up what's good and shows up what could be changed. Yeah. So but you see how a genuine self-criticism, in this best sense of trying to bring out more of ourselves, can have riding on it without us being quite aware of it, a kind of subtle negation of what's happening. What's happening isn't good enough. It needs to be more than this. What's happening isn't as good as it was yesterday or a year before or 5 years ago. Or what's happening is not as good as I've read in things in books. Or what's happening is not as good as what I think I should be doing. This is like a habit of what you could call kind of micro-aversions. Yeah, it's like you're sprinkling your meditation with little kind of ice cubes of micro-aversion. Yeah, and what you're trying to do in meditation is warm up and enrich your whole experience. You're trying to, first of all, have this lovely sense of calm and settledness, and embodiedness and wholeness, and that's experienced emotionally, as it were, as an experience of well-being, of peace, of contentment, of being at home in yourself. Yeah, you're wanting those. In a way, you could say that's the basis of meditation. Whether you, as I said, I'm not teaching a particular meditation this week because I want to make sure that anyone can join at any time, and we can just explore these great matters of working with our mind. Perhaps at the end, I will say a little bit about particular practices, but I'm not particularly concerned with that this week. I'm wanting to look at more fundamental approaches to your experience. So yeah, you're looking for this sense of unity and wholeness, which is a sort of cool way of putting it. But if you talked about it in a warm way, you'd say a state of radiant well-being, that lovely state where you just feel okay. You're not in an opera in love with yourself in some sort of sentimental way. You just feel sort of warmly okay and a sense of well-being. Those are kind of fundamental ways of being in meditation that you're trying to nurture. Yeah. And you see, if we keep on saying that's not good enough, oh dear, I've got distracted again. How long have I been distracted for? How come my mind can't quiet down? How come I'm not as good as this person at meditation? How come it's going wrong again? What you're doing to that attempt to create this warm, unified state is adding an ice cube each time. Yeah, and each time you do that, you're pushing the meditation away from you. Yeah? That's what you're doing, and it's not easy to spot because they're kind of micro-aversions. They're not kind of. You're not necessarily kind of in a big aversive state, even aversive state to your own mind, although that can happen as well. It's a little kind of micro-aversions, and you can have a habit of doing that. Yeah, that you habitually, even when you're thinking, as it were, positively, there could be so much more to my experience. Your mind is actually pointing to, and there's not at the moment. Do you see what I mean? It can look like a positive, but actually you're seeing it through a negative. Yeah? You've got that kind of aversive sense of yourself. Yeah. I mean, I've had this very, very strongly in my life, and you would say unconsciously, but that's actually an exaggeration when people say things are unconscious. Otherwise, you wouldn't know they exist. I unconsciously think I'm Brad Pitt, but I wouldn't know because it's unconscious. That was a joke. I don't actually unconsciously think I'm Brad. What we mean when we say that, we mean habitually, and habits are. People even say this is a deep habit. There's no such thing as deep habits. There's only superficial habits. It's just that habits they flow through you without you realizing that that's what they are. Yeah. So I had just a habit in meditation of easily thinking, I probably can't do it. As soon as you think you can't meditate, or you're not very good at this, or you get distracted, what will happen is you'll get lots of evidence to confirm your thought. Because every time you're bound to get distracted in meditation, and every time you get distracted, it'll be more evidence that your belief that you can't meditate is right. Yeah. So, you get distracted, you think, oh no, there I go again. As soon as you get into there I go again, this meditation isn't going as well as usual again, or here I go again and getting distracted, you're actually in aversion. Yeah. It doesn't show up like aversion, but that is an aversive state of mind. As soon as you're getting irritated with the fact that you've got a sore back, or a recurring argument in your mind, you're actually slipping into aversion. And as soon as you're slipping into aversion, you're moving away from that sense of unified well-being that is the foundation of meditation, and which will actually, in its own way, in its own time, and open up for you if you can keep on just nurturing that in a patient, respectful kind of way. Yeah. Just to go back to Iain McGilchrist for a moment. This wonderful book, The Master and His Emissary. He quotes Heidegger, the German philosopher, and Heidegger talks in terms of waiting on your experience, which is rather lovely. He contrasts it with waiting for something. So if you're not careful in meditation, you're waiting for something. Whilst you're waiting for something, you're not actually kind of there. It's like waiting for a bus, except for you're waiting for meditation and a meditation to arise or something. Yeah. So Heidegger talks about, instead of waiting for something, you're waiting on your experience. Yeah. And he says it's a patient, respectful nurturing of something into disclosure. It's a lovely way of putting it. A patient, respectful nurturing of something into disclosure. And that's what you're trying to do with meditation. You're waiting on your experience in a patient, respectful, and nurturing kind of way. And those deeper experiences will start to disclose themselves to you. Yeah? McGilchrist talks about a highly active passivity, which I rather liked. A highly active passivity. Yeah. But in that highly active passivity in this meditation, what I want us to do is really look out for a micro habit of micro-aversions, yeah? Where you're, without noticing, you just very, very, in a very small way, but in a habitual way, finding your experience lacking, yeah? Not being satisfied with it, comparing it with your experience you had or would like to have, or comparing it with experiences you've read about or experiences that other people seem to have. Yeah, and you can do that in a very subtly habitual way and be pushing your meditation further and further away from you without noticing it, like adding a little ice cube to the cup of hot coffee that you wanted to enjoy. Yeah, you're just making it more and more cold, and therefore you're actually moving away from where we're trying to get to. So I want to say a little bit more about that tomorrow. But I think that's what I want us to do today. Well, again, we're taking it very, very slowly. As I said, some of you I know have meditated for a long time, but we can never get beyond these very deep fundamentals. I'm not beyond them and you're not beyond them. So you might feel that we're going a bit slowly, but I just want to keep on going back to this whole body sense, and we can include into that list hearing sounds around us. So that body isn't something that you're wrapped in. It's not a thing that moves you around. It's a kind of living spirit that we live through. We don't even inhabit, because even when you say you inhabit, it's like somebody inhabiting a house, and the house can be dispensed with or can be moved into another house. It's our body. I mean, Schopenhauer believed that the body is a sort of concrete element of the mind. He said that when you feel something in your mind, it shows in your body. It's not one and then the other. Yeah. So you're trying to experience the body as a living cloud of sensation, and that extends somewhat beyond the body, as we usually literally think of it. Yeah? So we'll carry on doing that. We'll carry on imagining, moving between this sort of open awareness, open body, and you can nurture that again by, if your body's feeling quite tense or that there's anxiety in your experience, well, you can just configure the breath, that the breath is coming in a very soothing and comforting kind of way, settling and smoothing out and soothing out the whole body. And then just imagine for a while feeling happy, imagine well-being, either bring to mind a time when you felt a sense of well-being in meditation or out of meditation, a time when you felt warmly connected to yourself and to other people. Try and bring it to mind as vividly as you can. Remember what you were doing, what you were wearing, how you felt in the body. But don't ponder over it. It's just like reading the novel of your life. and let it just be, read through, as it were. And you're looking and you're keeping in touch with the body, and you're doing those two things. And you're particularly in this meditation, you've got an eye out for a kind of micro habit, a subtle habit of finding fault, of aversive attitudes to your own body, or aversive attitudes to your own mind, aversive attitudes to how you think you're doing with this meditation. In a way, it's a bit of an extension of what I said yesterday about monitoring how you're relating to your experience now. Perhaps even using that instead of this idea of effort, which has got this metaphorically can be sort of confusing. Just monitoring how you're getting on just now. And as usual, I'll read a poem at the end, start and at the end. No, I don't normally talk about the poem, but it's worth knowing that this poem called Ecclesiastes by the American poet Richard Wilbur. He wrote this. I think he died fairly recently, in the last year or two. He actually started as a war poet, as a Second World War poet, and he wrote the poem in his very, very late last collection, which has only got a few poems in it. He was in his 90s. I think he was about 93 or 94 when he died. So this is one of his last poems, and that adds, if you know that about him, it adds to the weight of this really quite miraculous poem. Okay, enough already. So let's get ourselves set up for meditation. You might want to turn the light of your screen down and put flux on. And then when you're just taking time to set up, taking all the time you need, and then when you're ready, closing your eyes. As soon as you closed your eyes, see if you can, once again, just open up to the body sense. So feeling the weight and the warmth of your body. And once again, softening your face. So you're not using your face anymore. You're not using your eyes. So your brow can soften. All those small muscles around the eyes. See if you can soften them. Just notice if you're gripping in your jaw or if you're puckering your mouth. You don't need to do that just now. And then bringing your awareness into your shoulders. Just play with ways of softening your shoulders. So you can imagine your shoulders releasing, relaxing. You could just imagine the breath, breathing into your shoulders, feeling the breath in your shoulders. Perhaps tuning into the out breath and letting your shoulders go. If there's discomfort in your shoulders, just imagine that the breath is soothing, smoothing out those discomforts. And then becoming aware of your belly. Can you tell if you're gripping in your belly? Again, we tend to do that habitually, automatically. So can we find ways of just encouraging the belly to soften, breathing into any discomfort, imagining belly softening. calming the body, calming the mind. And then feeling the thighs. Very often we're gripping in our thighs without really meaning to, without noticing it. Just imagining your whole body calming down, quietening down. Ecclesiastes. We must cast our bread upon the waters, as the ancient preacher said, trusting that it may amply be restored to us after many a day. That old metaphor, drawn from rice farming on the river's flooded shore, helps us to believe that it's no great sin to give, hoping to receive. Therefore, I shall throw broken bread this solemn day out across the snow, betting crust and crumb the birds will gather, and that one more spring will come. So first of all, opening your awareness to inhabit the whole body. Body isn't a thing, it's a cloud of changing sensations. See if you can open out to that. And keep coming back to that when your mind narrows to a thought or to a particular area of the body. And doing that in a patient, respectful and nurturing way. If your body feels tight or uncomfortable, you can tune into the breath in the body, particularly feeling a sense of the breath nurturing and softening and soothing and smoothing the body. Just that thought will help a little. When your mind goes off, that's okay. Just see if you can stretch out your mind again to include the whole sensations of the body, the energy of the body. It's a kind of cherishing of that you're looking for, a valuing of that. Sometimes it's helpful to listen to the sounds around you in that embodied way, in that whole body way, as if your whole body is listening. And then spend some time cultivating or imagining well-being. You might bring to mind a time where you felt happy and content. Or just imagine what that would feel like now. But doing that in a very embodied, connected way, not in a broken off way. Not being too ponderous about it. Just lightly imagining the state of mind you'd like to be in, as if that's happening now. You're not trying to force anything. You're just imagining in an embodied way. And as we meditate, you're keeping an eye out for any kind of habit of micro-aversion. Seeing if you can just step aside from that habit and nurture imaginatively this sense of well-being, of happiness, of unity, of ease. And opening out again to a whole body sense. So we're looking at this sense of awareness and whole body unified. And this unification feels like well-being. And you keep noticing any tendency towards a kind of aversion to your own experience, and just setting that aside. Keep coming back to this whole sense of the body. Keep noticing any tendency to find fault. So you're trying to nurture a whole body sense of well-being. And if you find it useful, you can imagine the breath calming and soothing the whole body, the whole mind. So you're settling down more and more deeply. Into this very human sense of well-being. Ecclesiastes. We must cast our bread upon the waters, as the ancient preacher said, trusting that it may amply be restored to us after many a day. That old metaphor, drawn from rice farming on the river's flooded shore, helps us to believe that it's no great sin to give, hoping to receive. Therefore, I shall throw broken bread this solemn day out across the snow, betting crust and crumb that birds will gather and that one more spring will come. When you're ready, opening your eyes. So once again, we've got some time for questions. If you've got any questions. As I say, we'll explore a bit more about that tomorrow, but let's see what questions there are today.
So Nick Wilson says, when I'm meditating, I can get into a thinly mode about the meditation itself. Trying to cultivate the antidotes, I get busy. Are we trying to think? Are we not trying to think at all? A thinky mode, he says.
A thinky mode. Our humanity is pretty much a thinky mode at the moment, isn't it? It's quite a nice way of putting it. Thank you, Chris. It's a common misconception about meditation that that you're not supposed. You're trying to stop thought. Sometimes people's idea of meditation is like a computer screen when the plug has been pulled out, just blank, which to my mind doesn't sound very great. I remember being on this interfaith panel, and someone was trying to ask this question about, should we stop thinking? Are we trying to stop thinking when we meditate? And somebody was saying yes, and then somebody else was saying, oh no, what you need is a holy thought. And everybody rather cooed over the idea of holy thought, but nobody actually knew what it meant. And I was, saying what really Bhante Sangharakshita, the founder of our movement, said. He would say, look, there's two kinds of thought. There's thought that takes you out of meditation, and then there's thought that takes you into meditation. The second is more responsive, it's more integral, it's more integrated, it's less broken off from your whole experience, it's more curious, it's more helpful, yeah? So you're trying to move from the kind of thought that's just thinky thought, which is, what would be a nice translation of this word propuncture, mental proliferation, mental chatter, and then you can mentally chatter about your mental chatter. I can't believe I got so much mental chatter. And what was that word again? Propuncture. We just we're like onion skins of thought surrounding thought. So you're looking for thought that every time I say something like bring yourself back to the whole body experience, you see how basically I'm using thought to do that. You're just remembering, oh, hang on, I'm trying to do that whole body thing. Let me listen to sounds at the moment. Let me just imagine something at the moment. They're all thoughts. We're trying to keep them quite sort of light and not ponderous, as I've said before. You're not pondering over thought. But nearly always it's unhelpful to think of, well, it's pretty much always unhelpful to think of not thinking. As soon as you think about not thinking, you're just thinking more. Yeah. Actually, as you get deeply absorbed in meditation, your thoughts do quieten down to a remarkable degree, because so much of so-called, it's interesting, we only have this word thought. Actually, most of what we call thought is propuncture, which is just mental proliferation. It's not really thought. Thought is what philosophers do. Thought is a wonderful, creative capacity in human consciousness, a unified, creative, magical thing that human beings can do. We don't really mean that. We don't mean the thought of, Marilyn Robinson writing her wonderful novel, Gilead novel series. We don't mean that kind of thought. We mean a kind of rubbishy, that kind of thought, chit chat, like a YouTube channel going on constantly in your mind. And as you settle into meditation, as you become more embodied, that kind of thought will quieten down. But it needs to quieten down as a consequence of engaging with the meditation as I've been teaching it. It doesn't work if you try and quieten it down. If you try and quieten down your mind, you get what's called an ironic response. In other words, your mind gets noisier. So usually it's not valuable to try and think of quietening down your mind. It tends to make it noisier. It will just happen as you cultivate well-being and whole body sense, or other senses in meditation, such as focusing on the breath, or I won't be teaching it, but the Maitreyabandhu practice. Some of you know that. Loving kindness practice. But yes, think of it primarily as can we move from thought that just takes us out of meditation into fantasy very often, into rumination, into planning, into worrying, into arguing? Can we move from that kind of thought into thought that's taking you into your experience, guiding you back to the body, back to direct experience? Yeah, it's better to think like that. I think it's simpler to think like that. Yeah. I don't know whether that answers your question, Chris, but I rather like the thinky thing. I mean, that's what human beings are becoming if we're not careful. It's just thinking machines.
So Amy's asking, would you say that we are blending sukha and dukkha in this meditation?
Oh, crumbs. I don't know. So sukha means happiness, dukkha means... Well, dukkha is usually they're Pali words for anyone coming new to the meditation. And dukkha, really, they're rather grand words, but they really means that sense of dissatisfaction, that ongoing sense of dissatisfaction that all human beings, at least human beings that are honest with themselves, can see. If you look at your experience, it's never quite right. And that can be at deeper and deeper levels, and that's in a certain sense why you practice any kind of so-called spiritual life, that awful term, spiritual, which I'm slightly allergic to. A life committed to meaning and value is because ordinary life, going on holiday, getting a promotion, having lots of sex, etc., it doesn't do what it says it will do. It doesn't make you feel completely happy and unified and fabulous all the time. It just doesn't do that, can't do that. Sukha is a happiness. I think probably I'd put it more simply. I'd just say at the moment we're looking to cultivate what Buddhism would call sukha, which means basically just sort of happiness, well-being. we need to find ways of, even this word cultivate, I mean, the metaphor of cultivation suggests that something's already there, doesn't it? And unfortunately, it weirdly has this sense as if you have to make it happen. But the actual metaphor is saying you need to cultivate something. It's sort of there in potential. You just need to, put water. If there's a seed there, you need to water it. You need to, get sunlight onto it and so on. So somehow we need to remember that all of these things are kind of there. This sense of well-being, you do experience that. Even when you're listening to a novel or just drinking a cup of tea, there's a bit of well-being. Might not be very strong, but you're trying to just sort of fan the flames of that a bit. And you can do that, as I said, imaginatively, and you can do that, remembering times when you feel like that, or you can do that by sort of cultivating this whole body sense, because this sense of whole body and well-being are sort of two sides of the same coin, I think. So it's more a sense at first of just cultivating this very simple, ordinary sense of well-being. It's nothing dramatic. You've already got the seeds of it in your experience now, but you see how we need to attend to those seeds, because you've also got seeds of non-well-being, and you've got seeds of aversion, and you've got seeds of anxiety, and you've got seeds of doubt, and if you're not careful, you're cultivating those. Oh, I'm not sure this is. I shouldn't have tuned in today. I should have lay in bed. Actually, I'm really sure I am a bit. You're actually cultivating the seed of doubt, yeah. Or there's a little argument that you've been having, and you start to give that attention, and you start to cultivate that seed. Before you know it, the whole meditation is full of what you should have said to that person in that argument 5 days ago, or what you should say in the future when you talk to them. That time that you keep going over what you're going to say to somebody when you see them again. And often enough, you never say it, but you compulsively go around it. So when we're doing that, we're cultivating aversion, yeah? It's as simple as that. The Buddha is very pragmatic in this way. He just says, well, okay, what do you want to cultivate? You've got all these seeds in consciousness, including seeds that can flourish into Buddhahood. What do you want to do? What are you going to give your attention to? What are you going to cultivate? If you're not cultivating a sense of well-being, a sense of value and meaning, and all of these things that we're trying to do in meditation, you'll be cultivating something else. At the moment, it seems I'm at the moment reading a long poem by W.H. Auden called "The Age of Anxiety," which was his has become a kind of synonym for the 20th century, the age of anxiety. I think we now have the age of indignation, where either we're feeling indignant or we're feeling indignant about people feeling indignant. And it's easy to just cultivate that. If you want to, you can sit down here in the morning and think of something you're indignant about, and off you go. You can fill your mind with a sense of righteous indignation, and it's weirdly intoxicating and toxic, yeah? So what we're trying to do is say, look, let's park that at least. Yeah, I know you want to do that, and not even being sort of empathic with that, Yeah, I know you're feeling a bit grumpy and a bit indignant this morning. We all do. But let's try and cultivate something a bit more valuable than that, yeah? Because we just don't realize how deep the mind can go and how much there is we could cultivate. Yeah? We just don't realize it. Reading Marilyn Robinson, she says we allow an astonishing fertility to go to seed. So that's a beautiful way of putting it. She thinks she by an astonishing fertility. That's her description of the human mind. We allow an astonishing fertility to go to seed. And what you're doing in meditation is you're trying not to do that, not to allow an astonishing fertility to go to seed. You're trying to actually nurture that astonishing fertility that is your mind. Anyway, I've talked for so long I can't remember what the question was.
Sukha and Dukkha.
Oh yeah, Sukha and Dukkha, yes. So we've gone somewhere away from that, but I think that's a sort of answer.
Pete asks if aversion and thoughts in general are also another form of sensation. Can we also approach them like we would a sore shoulder?
Don't know. Did it early in the morning. So what that touches into is this very important insight that the Buddha has, and which Buddhism has, if we could but remember it, which is that all experience has Vedana. Yeah? So Vedana is another Buddhist word, a Pali word, not easy to translate it. It means, Vedana means, it's usually translated as feeling sensation if you hyphenate that. It doesn't actually mean emotion, that's more complex, that's actually chitta, but Vedana means that everything you experience, a memory, my feet on the carpet in this connected shrine room, the warmth or coolness of the room, a theory, an ideology, everything you experience through your mind sense or your body sense has a hedonic tinge, is a technical way of putting it. It will feel somewhere on the pleasant spectrum or somewhere on the unpleasant spectrum, or you don't know yet, it's kind of in between. Yeah. And everything you experience has Vedana, yeah? So even though Vedana doesn't mean emotion, to go to your question, emotions themselves have Vedana. So if you're in a bad mood and if you're having negative thoughts, those negative thoughts have an unpleasant Vedana. And you know that, as soon as you get into that bad mood, you feel unhappy. If you don't believe me, just notice your time when you're feeling hatred or aversion to someone, and you actually feel your body is physically tense, your guts are tense, your brow is furrowed, and you feel a kind of you feel unpleasant Vedana. It sounds terribly technical, but the taste of your experience, that's a good way of thinking about Vedana, the kind of taste of your experience is bitter, yeah? It's poisonous, yeah? And just as if you're in just as when you've been generous to someone and connected with someone, the taste of that is good, generally speaking. It's actually a bit more complex than that, because you can have bitter tastes that are good and pleasant tastes that are bad. But, for instance, you can take pleasure in feeling indignant, for instance. People do. I say people, we all do. You can rather like that harumphing state of mind you're in, but it's actually thoroughly negative, but it feels like sort of toxically pleasurable. Do you see what I mean? And on the other side, you can feel ashamed of something that you've done. I don't mean guilty in that neurotic sense. Guilt is a neurotic, unhealthy emotion. It's in essence gone about that. But if you feel that, if you've lied and you realise you've lied, you feel that twinge of, even more than a twinge, a pang of shame. In Buddhism, that's a very positive state of mind, but it feels unpleasant. So you've got an unpleasant Vedana there, but an actual positive chitta. But it all gets a bit technical sounding. But yes, so the answer to your question is yes, your thoughts have Vedana, and you can tune into the Vedana of your thoughts. In fact, one of the good ways of working with meditation is dropping beneath the narrative of what you're thinking about, a meeting I've got later on, a difficult conversation I've got, a cuddle I'd like to have, or a bit more. You drop underneath that to how it feels to think that in your body. It will have a Vedana, yeah? And you can work then directly with the Vedana. It's really the Vedana that is the so-called distraction, not the thought. Thoughts are kind of the icing on top of emotion and intuition and Vedana. Yeah. So another way of working is simply to notice the Vedana that the thoughts are coming out of. Yeah. You know what it's like. Yeah. I notice this when I cycle across town in London. When I go, for instance, like when I used to go and babysit for the girls, I cycle back from South London, and it was lovely being with Alex or Ria, and then I'd be cycling back at night. It'd be cold. There'd be all this traffic, and what you've got is your body is sort of on alert a lot when you're cycling. You feel the vulnerability of cycling through traffic. It's unpleasant. And then from that unpleasant Vedana, I notice it's very, very easy for my mind to get angry with either, sort of drivers, or with, it's like my mind is now my mind state is in this kind of unpleasant room. And then that makes me think of other things that are unpleasant. So I go to that argument I'd like to have with someone. I go to this thing I feel critical about. And it's coming out of just a sense of unpleasant Vedana, yeah? Of a kind of, the taste of my experience is threatening. And then as soon as you get into that taste that's threatening, it makes you want to think of other tastes that are threatening, yeah? And similarly, in positive states of mind, that you have a taste that's, if you start to feel grateful, for instance, and that's an absolute crucial to Buddhism, I think, is this sense of gratitude. If you want to know whether you're growing humanly and spiritually at all, you'll know because you feel more grateful. If you don't feel more grateful and you don't feel more generous, then you're not growing, no. You just got some sort of spiritual idea that you're rather pleased with. As you feel grateful to someone, you start to notice that you feel grateful for more and more things. You start to live in that world of feeling grateful, and there's so much, isn't there, to feel grateful for. It's just that we don't easily feel it. So we're all experience have Vedana. We're trying to keep working with our experience so that we're nourishing those seeds of, even Buddhahood itself, yeah, even this new awareness itself. And that's wholly doable every time we're sitting to meditation, every time in our life when we choose not to react but to respond, we're reshaping our life. Yeah? Every time we're generous, every time we're grateful, every time we help someone, any time we tell the truth, we're actually shaping our life so that our life is more of the nature of value and meaning and truth and love and so on. And meditation is a deepening of that. It's not something else than that. Anyway, I think that might be nearly as much as we can do. So once again, if we can, it'd be really helpful if, at the moment, Nick is amazingly putting up these led meditations and meditations every day, I think. So, it would be great if you could share them with your friends. Just, it's so easy now just to share YouTube. And, if you've got friends that you haven't meditated before, say, well, why don't you try doing these? You can play them back on YouTube. And then once again, if you can give, I'm sure you can give, do give. Well, I was thinking the first thing we need to do is support Nick. So this is a new project. The Nature of Mind is a new project. And we couldn't do it without Nick working on it full time. I'm just doing it when I can. Nick is always in front of a screen, it seems to me, having to do something with a website about which I know nothing. He was even looking at coding the other day. That's beyond my ken. So we need to support him. So we're looking to sort of raise something about 20,000 or something like that in this first 6 months of the project, and I'm hoping that if we can do that, then we can continue the project. So yeah, do give. I'll ask Nick to put the you put it already. There you go. He's so good. So yeah, you can donate there. That'd be great. And then that just means that we can support Nick and then carry on, all the things that we need to do for the project. And hopefully have season 2, it's like a box set, we'll have season 2, and you can say that you were there at Nature of Mind season 1. First, you were there, you could, like the first Barbra Streisand concert or something. I don't know how she came into my mind. Okay, so look, that's probably enough. So really good to see you all again this morning. So we'll do the traditional unmute and say bye-bye. And hope to see you all again tomorrow, and we'll carry on meditating together and exploring the mind together, this Nature of Mind project. So you can unmute, I think, now.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Beautiful day.
Have a good day. Have a good evening if it's your evening. A day if it's your day.
Thank you so much. Bye.
See you later. See you
Thank
Tyler.
you.
Good to
Bye.
see you. See you later. See you Claire. See you everybody.